In the early 20th century, America was a divided nation. The words of its Constitution promised liberty and equality, but the streets, buses, schools, and neighborhoods told another story. Signs of segregation scarred the South, reminding Black Americans at every turn that their humanity was discounted. And yet, in the midst of this division, on January 15, 1929, a child was born in Atlanta, Georgia, who would one day challenge the conscience of the nation. His name was Martin Luther King, Jr. Martin's childhood was marked by both love and pain. His father, Martin Luther King, Sr., was a proud and fiery Baptist preacher. His mother, Alberta Williams King, was a teacher and a source of calm strength. Together, they raised Martin in a home grounded in faith, education, and dignity. But beyond the safety of his household, the world was cruel. As a young boy, Martin experienced racism firsthand. A white childhood friend suddenly told him, "We can't play together anymore. My father says I'm not allowed." It was a devastating blow, the first of many lessons that the world saw his skin color before it saw his humanity. Yet even in those moments of pain, Martin's parents reminded him that his life was defined not by the hatred of others, but by the love of God. This lesson would shape him for the rest of his life. As he grew, Martin excelled in school. He skipped grades, entered Morehouse College at just 15, and quickly earned a reputation for his sharp intellect and thoughtful spirit. He was deeply influenced by Benjamin Mays, the college president, who became a mentor and instilled in him the belief that religion must not only comfort but also confront injustice. From Morehouse, Martin went on to study theology at Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania, where he graduated at the top of his class. But his hunger for knowledge pushed him further. He enrolled in a doctoral program at Boston University, where he studied the great thinkers of history, from the Christian theologians to the writings of Mahatma Gandhi, whose philosophy of nonviolent resistance would later become central to his mission. In Boston, Martin met Coretta Scott, a young woman with a radiant voice and a spirit as determined as his own. Their marriage in 1953 was more than a union of two hearts. It was the beginning of a partnership that would carry them through the storms of history. By 1954, Martin Luther King Jr. became the pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. At just 25 years old, he was stepping into a pulpit in a city simmering with racial tension. He could not yet know that within a year, history would thrust him into the national spotlight. That moment came on December 1st, 1955. A seamstress named Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white passenger on a segregated bus. Her quiet act of defiance lit a spark, and the Black community of Montgomery rose in protest. They called for a boycott of the city's buses, but they needed a leader, someone young, educated, and untarnished by local politics. The community turned to Martin Luther King Jr. When King addressed the crowd at Holt Street Baptist Church, the energy was electric. His voice rose, steady and firm. We are not wrong in what we are doing. If we are wrong, the Constitution is wrong. If we are wrong, God Almighty is wrong. But we are not wrong. With those words, the Montgomery Bus Boycott began. For 381 days, Black residents refused to ride the buses. They walked miles to work, organized carpools, and endured harassment, threats, and violence. King's own home was bombed. Yet in the face of terror, he preached nonviolence. At last, in December 1956, the Supreme Court ruled bus segregation unconstitutional. The boycott was victorious. Martin Luther King Jr., just 27 years old, had emerged as the new voice of the civil rights movement. But victory came with a price. King was now a marked man. The FBI, under J. Edgar Hoover, began tracking him closely, tapping his phones, spreading rumors, and attempting to discredit him. White supremacists targeted him with threats and attacks. Yet none of it silenced him. In 1957, King and other leaders formed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, dedicated to fighting injustice through nonviolent protest. For King, nonviolence was not weakness. It was moral strength. Inspired by Gandhi, he believed love was more powerful than hate, and that peace could achieve what violence never could. But the road ahead would test that belief. The early 1960s brought some of the most dramatic moments of the struggle. In Birmingham, Alabama, King and other activists confronted one of the most brutal systems of segregation. Peaceful protesters were met with fire hoses, police dogs, and mass arrests. King himself was jailed. It was there behind bars that he wrote one of the most important documents of the movement, the letter from Birmingham jail. In it, he declared, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." His words challenged not only segregationists, but also moderates who preferred order to justice. A movement reached its defining moment in 1963. On August 28th, more than 250,000 people gathered in Washington, D.C. for the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Standing before the Lincoln Memorial, Martin Luther King Jr. delivered the speech that would echo through eternity. "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." The crowd erupted. The speech was broadcast around the world. The dream became not only King's vision, but the vision of a generation. The momentum continued. In 1964, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act, ending legal segregation in public places. That same year, King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, the youngest recipient at the time. A year later, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was signed, securing the right to vote for millions of Black Americans who had long been silenced. Yet, even in triumph, King saw deeper struggles ahead. Poverty, inequality, and war weighed on his heart. While many celebrated progress, King insisted the fight was not over. He began speaking out against the Vietnam War, calling it unjust and immoral. His words, "A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift, is approaching spiritual death," angered politicians, generals, and even some allies. But King could not betray his conscience. By 1968, King's vision expanded. He called for the Poor People's Campaign, demanding economic justice for all Americans, Black, white, Latino, Native. In March, he traveled to Memphis, Tennessee, to support striking sanitation workers carrying signs that read, "I am a man." On April 3rd, at Mason Temple, King delivered his final speech. His voice carried both weariness and prophecy. "I've been to the mountaintop. I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land." The next evening, April 4th, 1968, as King stood on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, a rifle shot ended his life. He was 39 years old, but death could not silence the dream. The assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. sparked grief, riots, and mourning across the nation. Yet his vision lived on. Streets, schools, and churches now bear his name. His birthday is celebrated as a national holiday, and his memorial, carved in stone in Washington, stands as a testament to the enduring power of his words. King's life reminds us of a profound truth, that the fight for justice is never finished. His voice still calls us to action. His dream still challenges us to see beyond race, beyond hatred, beyond division.